good to go? You just let me know. Everybody good? All right, welcome. Thank you for working with our schedule. As you may know, we had Senator Rick Scott in town. I was able to spend some time with him this morning, as well as with some of our leaders from the school district, both Escambia and Santa Rosa, as well as all of our law enforcement officials, including Chief Randall and Chip Simmons and others, to talk about things that are very important to us, public safety as a whole, and of course, the safety of our kids. So that certainly enjoyed getting to share thoughts and ideas about that today at the Flight Academy, and again, appreciate everyone working with me on the schedule on that. We just had that meeting a couple hours ago, and it was really enjoyed. And I shared with one of the media outlets that was there, I shared the fact that Senator Scott, when we had the floods, all the rain, the foot of rain in a short time period just a couple months ago, the first person to reach out to me federally was Senator Scott, and just asked how we're doing, how he could be helpful to us. So I know there's a lot of stories since he's been governor over the years with Chip shared, and Mayor Hayward, I know, has shared before their relationship going through a lot of different things. We, knock on wood, have not had anything to the extreme of some of those hurricanes and the 2014 floods, but I would say in my small sample size, I'm very appreciative that you have a senator in the state of Florida that cares about all of Florida, and I don't know that you can always say that when you're up here in Northwest Florida, so very appreciative of that relationship. I'll go through a few things and then, of course, take your questions. We do have a resident satisfaction survey. It's going to look a little bit different this year. We tweaked, made some pretty significant tweaks to it to ultimately make sure that we've got a data that we can operate off of. You guys have heard me mention during some of the recycling conversation that we've asked that question on this survey about whether you'd be willing to pay for recycling at the curb for a fee. That's just one example. We've tried to really modernize this survey moving forward, so that when we get the answers back, there's something that we feel like we've got actionable data, so to speak. So really encourage everybody to fill that out, uwf.edu /Haas resident survey, and that's HAAS. You can also actually take it by phone, 850-495-2666, Monday through Friday between 8 and 5, and the survey deadline will be September 15th. Typically, I know the results last year were several hundred, which is more than enough of a strong sample size, and these are going to be city residents. We actually asked the question as scientifically as we can at the very beginning to say, do you live in the city? And we put in parentheses, that means you have a black garbage can. So, those people right on the edge of the city or the county that aren't exactly sure if they're in the limits, hopefully they'll read that, and we'll get, again, very accurate data for city residents. I'm going to give a quick kind of the top news update on Maritime Park Lots 4 and 5, and also we have Andrew Rothfeder here if you have any questions about. But the important thing to note is that Inspire, that of course has had the option on parcels 4 and 5, has extended their option for 6 months, which comes with a $60,000 payment as well for their commitment for those additional 6 months. That will take them to February. I'm not sure, again, Andrew will be able to answer if it's February 28th or the exact or what exact date in February, but that takes them from August to February. And again, this is a group that's spent a lot of time and money and energy in trying to figure something out that can work at 4 and 5. That these size of projects are very difficult to pull off and take a lot of background and research. So it is encouraging that a group that has a lot of that background and research already done continues to be interested in trying to figure something out and putting their money where their mouth is. That $60,000 for 6 more months. So I'm appreciative and look forward to those conversations, and as those negotiations get a little more serious. And again, after I'm done here, if you got any questions on the technical side for Andrew, he'll be happy to answer those. Airport escalator replacement. So we're going to schedule work this week. We'll begin on the second of the escalators. One's already been fixed And it's to replace the up escalator, but this reminded me, I felt like I was reading one of my daughter's fourth grade math questions. What's going to happen is we're replacing the up escalator, but we're turning the now new down escalator up. So we are not going to make people lug their bags up. We're going to have the inconvenience going downward. So I don't want anybody to hear we're replacing the up escalator and then that there's no way to use it. So we're switching the new one to go from down to up, and we will get working on the second one. So looking forward to having that done. Should be completed by Thanksgiving. That is really the main things I've got right now. If you have any other questions, Chief Randall is here as well on updates. If there's any questions as it pertains to some of the local happenings in law enforcement. But happy to take any questions you have.
Yeah, the Executive Director of Children's Trust sent out an email yesterday to the media as well as a lot of people for board, your staff, about in a way saying that she supported the Children's Resource Center. She calls it a family resource center. To us, it kind of looked like a double-edged sword. What's your take on the email? I mean, some positives, some of it seemed to be backhanded.
Yeah, actually, I just responded to it on the way down here. And to summarize my response is, this is not a discussion about whether the board or my contention about this is not based on whether the board would eventually support or not support it. I would like it to get on a fair shake, get to the board for them to be able to evaluate it. And I don't feel like we've gotten a fair shake at that. I feel like this has been 9 months of spinning our wheels. We are now being presented in an email yesterday with 7 bullet points of conversations that frankly should have been taking place months ago. These are questions about, would we be willing to have to lease it? Would we be willing to do X, Y, and Z? I'm not sure why. I think it really proves the point. Why are those coming up in an email to 20-something people 9 months after the first conversation? And the first conversation happened in late December, and Tammy at the Children's Trust sent us an email saying, really, really excited about this idea, and I outlined this in my response, and it included links to 7 children's resource or family resource centers. So, I mean, dating back to December 28th, if these were some of the hang-ups with a potential resource center, it was kind of her suggestion based on her expertise in previous trusts that even brought up this idea to us to begin with. We said, what's something we can do for children at this facility? And there was precedent out there. So we were excited to get that feedback. And so as you can imagine, to flash forward now 9 months, and there's questions, and now there's AG opinions. Why is it taking 9 months for an AG opinion on something that we all agreed was the format that has really never changed since that point? So as I say, in their confusion and lack of clarity is my issue. It's if this eventually gets to the board, and it's unfortunate that I feel like our joint effort has been tainted in some way, because it seems as if we're unwilling to work around the rules and regulations, which absolutely is not true. But because these keep being played out in the public meeting, and that's the first time we hear of some of these issues, unfortunately, the consequence has been that this is not a good application in my mind. I think this application is a good one, and I think it's taken some unfair hits based on lack of clarity and confusion. So, as I said, if the water's under the bridge, where we stand on those 7 bullets is we'll do whatever it takes to help almost 2,000 kids around that. I don't care if the city has to be out of it by law. I don't care if whatever we have to do, as long as it fits and complies with their rules, we will do our best to attempt to do it. This is not about us. This is not about me. It's not about our Parks and Rec department. It's about meeting immense need in our community. And so if someone would like to take our application that can comply with it better than we can, they can have it, and I'll fully support it. It's just a matter of, can we get this project done? And I just hate the fact that it's been dinged and it's been brought into several public meetings over 9 months for clarity questions that frankly could have been handled well before this. Anything else?
Okay, what about Reeves? Oh, that would be mine.
Yeah, go ahead.
The lodges, we got notification they're going to end in September. Did this catch you by surprise?
Yes, it did, and we got it, I think, the same time you guys did. So, we're mulling over our options right now. We certainly understand, and I think I uniquely understand Again, growing up around this and understanding the need for services, that there is a need there, and if that's a need that we're going to meet, we do have funding. I would like this to be a joint effort. The county has funding as well, and I not just even specifically to REAP, but just in the greater sense. I think every step that we take right now in this issue, I think moving forward needs to be collaborative. And to give the county and Wes and everybody credit, I think that we have made strides in that right now in terms of the joint conversations we're having about where we go from here. So this is a little bit, obviously this is not something we expected to be squarely in front of us with this kind of deadline. So we don't have a response to that yet, or anything that we can commit to say we are or not going to do. But it is on our radar, and we're going to try to work through that.
Have they come to you for funding, for a funding request?
Not directly. I have not had a meeting with Vinny or REAP about that
So
we
they
need
didn't
funding.
ask to be in the budget
We have received emails, but I wouldn't say there was ever any specificity that said, this is the amount of money we need by this amount of time. The first specific details around a date or any kind of funding amount, really, which I don't even think we really even have that necessarily, was this email. So we would get a lot of time. We get updates from Vinny. He's a good partner in that sense. But there was never anything that was really presented to us that I recall that was presented as, here's this call to order in 90 days. Nothing like that.
So, is it a possibility that they can reach out to you more?
Of course. I mean, I think that's my job and our job. I mean, anything that we should entertain, whether we end up doing it or we don't. I mean, across all fronts. I think we meet with folks all the time that say, hey, this is a need for us in the community, and here's why it's important to the city, and it's our job to hear that out. So, we haven't ruled anything out, but I would say we also haven't committed to anything yet. And what I'd be looking for, even in this short time window, is, again, some kind of collaboration between ourselves. We have been funding REAP previously in other projects and previous to my administration. We do have ARPA dollars that are earmarked for homeless reduction initiatives, although they're not tagged to a specific initiative. So we can have that conversation, and obviously we have urgency and understand that as well, but we also want to make sure we're making the right decision.
Mayor,
Yep.
at the agenda review last night, Caitlin gave a presentation on the micromobility, also known as scooter program.
Yep.
City Council Person Patton said that from the data, it appears that this is nothing but a joyride undertaking. What was your takeaway from the data they presented last night?
Well, the data suggested that about 45, depending on how you define it, between 45 and 55% of the rides are, when asked in a survey, that people had said they were just doing it to enjoy it. Yeah, not necessarily going. The other half were going to work, going to school, and there were many other options. But I don't think you're going to find a city in the United States that, the last time I was on a scooter in Denver, it wasn't necessarily always to go to the grocery store. That's part of the experience. We're a tourism destination. I think people use those things. Of course, what do we want to do? We do want to increase. Part of the argument for it is that people who don't have access to a car, we give them alternative modes of transportation, and we see that some people are doing that. And I mentioned to the VO representative during that meeting Monday to say they have a program that helps lower the price for folks that perhaps can't afford it. And that was really the first I had heard of that. So I think that means that we've got to do a better job of explaining that. And maybe if the goal is to have more primary transportation uses for VO, then I think the city has to play a role as well as VO in that. And let's share that, hey, it could be a little bit cheaper if this is a thing where transportation is a matter of need. So, I'll tell you anecdotally, I can't remember the last email other than Councilwoman Patton sharing some of her experiences. I can't remember the last email I've gotten ever since we went away from the standing scooters, the bird scooters, and then went to a seated scooter. So we've heard significantly less, and probably Code and PPD could speak more technically to it than I can. I can just say from again, anecdotal standpoint, how many emails I get, what I was getting when I started to what I'm getting now. I think there was a clear line that Mayor Robinson and myself talked about when I was mayor-elect, that there is a big help in the fact that when there's a seat on it and people now presume that they can be in the street and not necessarily on the sidewalk. Not perfect in that yet, but I think that was a big delineating factor that's helped improve the overall marriage between pedestrians and those vehicles.
One of the recommendations was that the city work with the county to find a way to extend the route so the scooters could go to Pensacola Beach.
Yeah.
And back, supposedly, if need be.
Yeah, I think.
What's your thoughts on that?
I mean, in principle, I think it would be great. I think we've got some fundamental things to work on, like the connectivity between us and the beach. On a current, if you own a bike right now, is it the safest place to go? We've had some conversations, very preliminary with FDOT, about I'm very interested in trying to pursue, and I think you see it if you look in the active transportation plan, that one of our biggest pain points and priorities should be the Bayfront Parkway area, the connection between Gulf Breeze all the way through Bayfront, as well as all the way to West Main, Barrancas, all the way to Bayou Chico. And if you look at the Sun Trail, which is really identified as a multi-use trail by the state of Florida, we have 2.2 miles of unfunded trail, which all happen to be right between the 3 Mile Bridge and the Bayou Chico Bridge. So we've made some. There's been some increase in investment by the legislature in this past session. So we've been our team, and I give them a lot of credit. We've kind of moved up the priority list the potential Sun Trail funding proposals along that corridor because sure, I'd love to see those, but I think what will help us start to see that more and more is to have the infrastructure in place that makes it safe. And in case it comes up, that is not a eliminating of any lanes along Bayfront. The thing that we would be entertaining would be narrowing the medians within the road and then having a protected bike lane on the south side. So it would not be going from 4 lanes to 2 or anything like that. It would just be, let's use some of that very valuable space that's in these very wide medians on Bayfront, and let's give that back to the pedestrian and make that a better experience. So it shouldn't affect traffic in any way. And we're a long way from that, to be clear, but it's something we support and that we're working towards. Yeah.
Skate spots.
Mm-hmm.
Councilman Jones brought this up, and John Schill was up there, and it seemed like the mood of the council, having heard all this, was it was a pretty good idea, and it seemed to go back to Schill to come back with some ideas. What are your thoughts? Do you support this? Is this a reimagining of some of our parks in the different parts of the city?
Sure, I think there's a lot of ideas out there. We have a lot of parks, and we really have a lot of underutilized acreage within those parks. I think a good example of seeing that in mass, I think, is in East Hill. You have a lot of large city block size parks that maybe 8 to 10% of it is activated with a playground or a picnic table or something like that. You see that a lot, and the rest is really just, grass and weeds and, other things that we have to maintain. So I think we have a lot of opportunity to take some of the space we already have, and especially in small sizes like that, be able to activate the value of that park and bring value to that neighborhood and to the children and adults of that neighborhood. So like anything else, you've heard me say, like a broken record, we're always going to evaluate what the cost is and what it costs to maintain in perpetuity. I try to keep us out of the business of having more things to maintain. We got enough to deal with right now to keep our nose and mouth above water on the things that we have to maintain already. But as I said in the meeting, I think if we can find some private advocacy and partnership, be it a neighborhood association, a business, not so much to foot the entire bill. I think the city could play a role in that, of course, but I like the idea that everyone supports it, and it's important to someone other than just the city. If you get a $10,000 donation from a business that helps put a skate spot in, what happens? They're going to probably take care of it. They want it to look good. They've got representatives and so I like us all being hand in hand on making sure that when we do put something in, that it's there to stay and is a proud amenity within that neighborhood.
So with this many parks, and you said a lot of them are underutilized,
yeah.
Do you think that we are, the city is utilizing these parks to the best benefit of the citizens? So we do a park, we rehab it, it's the same thing, swing set, jungle gyms in,
Mhm.
all of that. Do you think we could do more? Have you asked Parks and Rec to think about new approaches to some of our parks?
Yeah.
You know, I was thinking about this park that sits across from the Publix over there on East Cervantes.
Mhm.
You know, is that, I mean, it's a big city block almost
Right.
over there.
Yeah, look, I think it's our charge always, and yeah, we've had very recent conversations, Parks and Rec and our administration, about maybe not just putting the same playground in at every place when it's time to replace one, but bring back some of the personality and uniqueness of these parks. Maybe it's a smaller structure, but it's something, Councilman Brer uses the example all the time of the cowboy park. When you grew up, you had, because that's kind of the theme of what that park was when it was put in. I think bringing uniqueness back to some of these parks, I don't want to give a negative connotation that because we have a lot to maintain, which we do, but that's what makes Pensacola great too. They have 93 and counting parks, and that you can't really live anywhere in the city of Pensacola without being able to walk to a park. Not everybody can say that. So, but for that to be the true amenity we want it to be, it means it's got to be well maintained, and we've got to have some of that character. So I think that's really our challenge, is looking at best practices. Look, some cities have gotten really smart, and they've activated within high traffic parks, say like a Bayview or a Maritime Park. They've looked at ways to partner with the private market and activate them, whether they put a coffee shop in or a restaurant. I think of Savannah as an example, where they have a full restaurant, right in the middle of their center park. So I'm not saying we're working on that right now, but just to give an example of, I love the acreage and the number of parks that we have if we can maintain them correctly, and I think we do have a little bit of a blank canvas on how we can look at these moving forward and make them even better for the citizen.
Can we ask Andrew a question?
Sure. Yeah, come on up.
Andrew, I want to ask about SB 102 and the current discussions with Inspire over lots 4 and 5, to the extent that you can unpack some of that, the potential effects, and what are they thinking in terms of SB 102's challenges and opportunities?
Sure. Thanks. Yeah, I think, about 6 or 7 months ago, we weren't sure the direction that Inspire was going to go. The headwinds in real estate development right now are pretty strong. So all the critical inputs for any developer, as you're seeing, are stressed right now. Labor, materials, capital, insurance. It's a hard time to get investment and development off the ground. So SB 102 is obviously opening some doors for some capital stack financing opportunities as it relates to affordable housing. And I think that is a significant part of why they've decided to exercise their option, is that they have found some things in there that are going to, potentially bridge the gap for them to make this able for them to do. So, I think the biggest misunderstanding out there is that a developer's sort of critical skill set is building things and filling them up. But the most important skill set for a developer is finance, right? These are capital intensive projects, and Inspire's very adept at trying to figure out how they can get a project financed. So I do think it's going to have an impact, and I think they're going to utilize it.
The opportunities for affordable housing at SB 102, is that being factored into Aspire's thinking over there?
Yes, and again, if you sort of dig into what's in SB 102, it's not sort of a black or white, the project's either this or it's that. There's levels within that for incentives for having components of the project that are affordable. And then you get into kind of the definition of affordability, right? What are the percentages of median income? So at the end of the day, I think everybody knows, and it's been said by all the planners, that a mix within a project is the healthiest approach. And I think there are provisions in SB 102 that allow for that. So that's where I think they're headed.
And has Inspire acquired some interest in parcels across Main Street over at the...
Correct.
And so is that part of the discussion, how those parcels could support 4 and 5 in terms of what ultimately gets put on the table?
Yeah, it's not. Of course, their project across the street is independent of this project. So I think the question there is going to be absorption in the market, right? Whether it's them or whether it's anybody, when you have a bunch of acreage and residential and mixed-use developers are buying up acreage all within a block of each other, how are you going to put enough variation in the product that comes out that you're able to absorb all of that? It's not too much of one thing. So yeah, they're completely separate projects, and there's no conversation there.
Structured parking is still less than feasible these days. Is that the way it's been looked at?
Yeah, I think that's a component, and we're seeing that in other projects in the city, in the county, in the whole country. Projects that are able to get financed right now are what they call suburban garden style residential with surface parking. Projects that require surface parking, we've heard numbers as much as $25,000, $30,000 per space for a parking space in a garage versus $2,000-$3,000 for a surface parking space. So the idea at Maritime Park would be to continue to not have to invest in structured parking as long as you can. I mean, we have so much vacant land still at Maritime Park. The very next project that comes out of the ground doesn't necessarily require a parking garage, because you can just start moving pieces around and, okay, we got vacant land over here, let's surface park this. At some point, you're going to reach the limit of that when the next person wants to do a project and say, okay, it's time, we have to invest in structured parking. But I think that's a smart business decision for the city, is to continue to figure out ways to not have to invest in structured parking until you have to.
Let's play devil's advocate on that. You're going to have to. I mean, from the very beginning, it was thought that would be a part of it. Aren't we just shifting? It's the city decision of the city then is we're going to give favor to this developer and try to put the price tag on the next developer. Is that a fair way to handle it?
No, I don't think that's the idea. 15, 16 years ago when the park got done, and there was right there on lot 4 in front, there's that surface parking lot of 350 spaces. Back then, per the original plan that was done, it was never thought that would be a 350 space parking lot forever. And it was a smart decision then. Let's handle the parking that we have to temporarily until such point down the road when we have to do something. So this has already been done. So when Maritime Office Building got built, that was a moment where they could have said, okay, let's go ahead and build a parking garage. But a smart business decision was made, which was, no, let's use this temporarily, and then when it comes time for the next developer, and we need to incorporate a structured parking garage into somebody's project, then we'll do it. So that's the question right now, and of course, Inspire has 6 more months, to try to figure out if what they're going to do is going to require that parking garage right now or later. So we'll see. But at the end of the day, no, this developer is not going to get any different treatment than any other developer for how structured parking is built and who pays for it. Yeah.
Well, aren't part of those 2 lots used for parking to satisfy the commitments made to Wahoos?
Correct. The whole front parcel 4 has 350 parking spaces on it.
So those spaces are going to have to come from somewhere else.
Well,
if they're built up.
Correct. Assuming that, so the way the deal structure is set up with Inspire is they can build on parcels 4 and 5 in 2 phases, so they don't have to build it all initially. So the idea is if they can do a first phase, that parking they need for their project, structured parking that they pay for that's within their project for their project, happens on half of the 2 parcels, and it allows the surface parking to sit there. The city can meet its needs. And if and when down the road Inspire's ready to do the next phase, then you'll be at a place where we have to make a decision.
Andrew, thanks. One more thing, just reminded me, talking about SB 102, and we have received the, and just as an update for the motor lodge, we have received the inspection, and our staff's going through that right now. And what we're really looking for is, ultimately, is there something foundationally that before we were to commit, we wanted to make sure there wasn't a landmine in there that was going to cause the cost to go up exponentially. Not so much in the minor condition issues, but in more of the foundational issues, that we want to make sure that if we're buying 30-ish units, that we're getting 30-ish units for the price. So we have our team, several parts of our team going through that, and if that passes the test, then we'll proceed to closing, and then our teams are already set up, Public Works, PPD, and our purchasing finance office, to start having conversations on three fronts. One is how we secure the facility, both from a camera law enforcement perspective as well as a fence Public Works perspective, and then to not have a day go by where we can't start moving the ball forward on a potential operator or a repair rehab scenario. So that's an update there, as well as you saw during the CRA meeting, there was the Reimagine Jackson presentation was given, and our intent, hopefully as part, which would be really a great 1-2 punch along with the $5 million that we had gotten for Brownsville, is that we right now, as it sits, not finalized, but have intent to put in for another potential grant that would help fund the A Street to T Street, the city portion of that Reimagine Jackson project. So excited, again, more to come there, but that's our intent. That would really, I believe, help now Brownsville and the Brownsville neighborhood there, really across two fronts.
Do you have any first look feedback on the inspection report of the lodge?
I have not personally run into anything yet. It's on my desk that would cause us not to do it, but I want to be careful in saying that. I've got people more that are better experts at digging through a significant inspection than I am, and I want to get their feedback, of course, get their recommendation. But we also went a step further, and we not only got an inspection report, but we also got kind of a range of cost of repair. So because we wanted to be as prepared as possible, whether we put a sign out front or we go through an RFP process, we wanted to be able to give as much quality information as we could to a potential operator about what kind of renovation we're looking at, and how that would play moving forward. So the early indications, I would say, are that it's a go, but again, I'm going to let our team go through that and make sure that we're in a good position there before we commit.
On the resident satisfaction survey,
Yeah.
is it solely volunteer that people call in, or they go to the website?
Yeah, and I believe
It's different than the past, then, because didn't they used to call?
It's the same.
Is it okay? So same process as the past. They would call. There is some outreach, but there's also I know we're sending a postcard out to everybody with a QR code, a website, and there's a phone number you can call in. But no, there's going to be some proactivity on the Haas side, right?
I don't know that there will be. Sorry,
Oh,
when
there-
I said it was the same as the past, I mean, as in previous surveys, they can call in, but we no longer call out.
Okay.
So doesn't that present a challenge of being able to get the data divided by districts? You don't know the district. That was the past study, was you could get some district analysis.
It is. I think it's, in any sense, it's always hard to do that because, frankly, not a lot of people really know what district that they're in. And so I know we identify, as I went through the model of this survey, that we mentioned, are you in the city? Do you have a black trash can? And kind of the second question is, we put the council map up, and we kind of have you identify as best you can where you are, but it's not. And I believe we do put a module in there that says that you can click on a link out of that survey and say, put your address in, and we'll tell you what district we're in. So yeah, it's always difficult. I can tell you from previous experience, a citywide survey, it's been difficult to have enough sample size within 7 different districts to really count on it. But the one benefit of, if we can get a similar response, which I believe was in the 700, 800, 900 range of residents.
It's at least 500.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. It was significant. A normal poll would be 250 or 300 would be enough. But the good thing about a poll of that size is that then when you do get it broken down by district as best you can, you have enough sample size to know what different priorities are.
Well, past polls, I think in Grover's administration, they used the poll also for some performance evaluation of departments. Is that going to be, are you going to use this the same way?
I would say likely no, because in terms of, if this is going to be the direct tie to to a bonus incentive or something like that, we may find another metric to do that. Only because, as you said, there's too much unknown. And I'll give an example. We made a change that we think is an improvement on this survey, where we would get the survey back, and the city residents were rating housing. Well, it would be terribly poor, the housing department, over other departments, and you wonder why. Well, it just says housing. So that was an indictment, not of the department. It was an indictment of the housing situation in the city to begin with. So now we have the big long version of like City of Pensacola Housing Services Department, so there's some clarity. So I just would, personally, I can't speak for decisions before, but I would say, even though these polls are valuable and it does help guide the direction of priorities and things like that, to punish or reward, so to speak, on an employee level with anonymous, data might be, I don't know. I think you could probably go down a couple rabbit holes there that wouldn't necessarily be fair to the employee.
So you see primarily as a management.
100%, and I think, and getting a sense of, why do you live here? What would you like to see that we don't have? All those things, and we could all sit around in a room right now and make some really good educated guesses, and we'd probably be right on some things, and we might be wrong on some things. I use stormwater as an example all the time. I cannot believe how high I can now, but I couldn't believe how high stormwater ranks in terms of its public safety, affordable housing, and stormwater's right up there under those ones that you see all the time. Any other community hasn't felt the pain that we felt, there'd be many other things, nightlife or something like that. Stormwater it's been painful for us, and so you can learn things like that where it really at least reinforces your priorities, or makes you second guess what the right step is for the city. So it'll be valuable in that sense for sure. All right. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate it.